The Super Bowl, the Olympics, the World Cup, packed stadiums, billions of dollars, and athletes turn into icons. Sports feel modern, something we invented sheerly for our own entertainment. But that's not entirely true, because what if sports aren't an invention at all? What if there's something much older? What if every game we've ever played is really evolution remembered? See, before there were stadiums, there were hunting grounds. Before there were trophies, there was survival. Before there were athletes, there were hunters. Just humans trying to survive another day. And somewhere along the way, something incredible happened. The skills we needed to stay alive became contests. Those contests became games, and over thousands of years, those games evolved into every sport you've ever watched in your entire life. Think about it. Running, throwing, wrestling, swimming, climbing, teamwork. Those were the difference between eating and starving, or escaping and dying. So how did a species of endurance hunters, precision throwers, and scrappy fighters become the most dominant species on Earth? And why are those same survival skills still the foundation of every game we play today? Because if you really want to understand sports, you have to go back. Before the NFL, before the Olympics, before civilization itself. Back to a time where the only prize that mattered was survival. And as strange as that sounds, the story actually starts even earlier than you think.
When properly trained, humans are one of the most incredible athletes of the animal kingdom.
Humans weren't built for stadiums, we were built for savannas. And that's an important part because humans aren't exactly impressive compared to the rest of the animal kingdom. For example, a cheetah can hit 70 miles an hour. A bear can kill you with a single swipe. An eagle can spot prey from miles away. So how did we manage to survive in all that? More importantly, how do we become the most dominant species on the planet? The answer comes down to four things that should sound familiar: endurance, intelligence, cooperation, and precision throwing. Let's start with endurance. Humans don't win because we're the fastest. We win because we don't stop. We keep moving and moving and moving until everything else gets tired. Intelligence is the next piece, because the hunt wasn't just physical, it was mental. Humans planned, humans communicated, humans adapted. We didn't just react to the world, we learned to outthink it. And then there's cooperation. One human by themselves is vulnerable. 10 humans together are borderline. That's why the power of friendship is so potent, and it's the foundation of every team sport ever created. Then we get to the most underrated skill in human history: throwing. Seriously, throwing might be humanity's greatest superpowers. Chimpanzees are stronger than we are, but they can't throw like us, not even close. And I know you're thinking of a monkey throwing their own poop right now, but rock with me, I promise this is different. Humans can generate incredible velocity. We can throw against moving targets. We can calculate distance. We can throw with accuracy. And for millions of years, we've been doing it. In other words, quarterbacks and pitchers didn't invent throwing. Evolution did. And if you look at your body, you can actually see the evidence. Long legs for most of us, powerful glutes, an Achilles tendon that acts like a spring, sweat glands that cool us efficiently, no thick fur to trap heat, a shoulder built for rotation, wrist built for accuracy, thumbs built for precision, blah, blah, blah. None of that is random. The body wasn't designed for office chairs. It's shaped by 2 million years of survival, and the daily demands were brutal. Hunter-gatherers didn't wake up and decide to get their 10,000 steps in. They walked because they had to, and almost everything they did revolved around 4 fundamental movements: running, throwing, climbing, squatting. Running to chase prey, throwing to hunt and defend, climbing to escape danger and gather food, and squatting to rest, work, and build tools. Again, does that sound familiar? It should, because every single sport you've ever watched is just a refined version of all those movements, which raises the question: maybe humans didn't invent sports at all. Maybe sports were inevitable. Maybe they were written into our bodies from the very beginning. And if that's true, then the first sport wasn't played inside of a stadium. It happened out on a savanna, and it started with a chase.
Running is deeply rooted in the human species.
Picture this. An antelope takes off running, full-blown hauling ass, or tail. The humans chasing it, just jogging. Eventually that antelope has to stop to recover, but the humans are still coming, so the animal takes off again. And once again, the humans still jogging. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, until eventually something happens. The antelope breaks down, not because it was slower or weaker, but because it got tired, and the humans didn't. Now the human has dinner for the next few nights. I've never actually eaten an antelope. I have no idea how long they last, and I didn't feel like looking it up, so we're gonna go with a few nights. But this hunting strategy has a name. Persistence hunting. You could argue it's humanity's first endurance test. The idea was first proposed by biologist David Carrier in 1984. Later, researchers Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman expanded on the theory. The argument was simple. Humans evolved to run, not faster than other animals, but longer. And when scientists looked at the evidence, they found something even more fascinating. Over 2 million years ago, members of the Homo genius, humans that weren't humans yet, started developing traits that made long-distance running possible. Arched feet to act like springs, long Achilles tendons that store energy, muscles built to resist fatigue, and one huge advantage that most animals don't have. Humans can separate their breathing from their stride. Four-legged animals can't. Their breathing is tied to their movement. Ours isn't. And then there's sweating, which sounds a lot less impressive until you realize it's one of humanity's greatest weapons. Most animals can't cool themselves off efficiently. Humans can, which means the hotter it gets, the more the advantage shifted in our favor. And that wasn't some strange behavior practice in one isolated tribe. A study published in 2024 documented 391 cases of persistence hunting from 272 different locations around the world, stretching from the year 1527 all the way to the 20th century. And this wasn't an exception, it was human strategy. Some hunts covered more than 60 miles in one day. And then in 2025, researchers recorded something they'd never directly measured before: persistence hunting in action. In the Namib Desert in southern Africa, over 3 days, hunters covered nearly 30 miles on foot across almost 8 hours. Temperatures reached over 100 degrees in freedom units. The ground itself became scorching, but while the hunter maintained a safe body temperature, the prey, the animal, the oryx, could not. It overheated, collapsed. And persistence hunting wasn't just theoretically possible, it actually worked, and it worked well. Now let's put that in the context of sports. The marathon, cross-country, triathlons, those aren't random inventions. You're looking at a survival strategy that dates back millions of years. In a weird way, every time you watch a marathon, you're watching the ancient hunt replay itself 2 million years later. Different rules, different rewards, same body, same blueprint, minus the death of an animal at the end. Most of the time, some traditions are different. But running wasn't the only advantage humans had, because if endurance made us dangerous, throwing made us deadly. And that's the skill that really changed everything.
Also evidence of a trait that no other species possess: the ability to throw projectiles and kill targets.
Before the spear, humans were prey. After the spear, humans became something else entirely. Throwing might be the most important skill in human history. Starting with the body. The human shoulder is not just a joint, it's a system built for stored energy. During the throwing motion, tendons and ligaments stretch like loaded rubber bands and then snap back, releasing a force at high speeds. A humerus has a unique twist that allows extreme rotation. The clavicle gives us reach and range. The forearm flexors combined with the opposable thumb gives us control at the exact moment of release. And that's something no other primate has: the dart thrower's wrist. All working together, all of it pointing to the same conclusion. This wasn't designed for modern sports, it was designed for survival. These traits show up together around 2 million years ago in the Homo erectus, another species that was humans before humans. Even Charles Darwin himself pointed it out. Once humans stood upright and freed their hands, they gained something new: the ability to use projectiles effectively for hunting. That changed everything. A chimpanzee is stronger than a human in almost every measurable way, but when it comes to throwing, it isn't even close. And in the early world, that difference meant life or death. A missed throw wasn't a failed fourth down, it was starvation. Accuracy meant survival, so picture early humans for a second. A group of hunters return from a kill. The tension's in the air. Someone picks up a stone or a stick and says, "I can throw it farther than you can," or "Oonga boonga boonga," whatever the legend was. The moment mattered because a contest is born not for entertainment, for skill, for survival. Archaeological evidence points back to the timeline. Hominins, yet another species of human that weren't yet, you know what, you get it. Were eating meat as early as 2.6 million years ago. By around 1.9 million years ago, they were likely hunting larger game. Over time, natural selection didn't just favor strength, it favored precision, control, timing. The same traits that define elite athletes today. That's why being a great quarterback requires more than just having a strong arm. Some researchers even suggest something more interesting: that the brain systems used for throwing, for mapping space and predicting movement, may have helped lay the groundwork for language itself. The same mind that learned to calculate a projectile may have learned to build a sentence. Now fast forward: javelin, shot put, discus, baseball pitching, and my favorite, a quarterback passing. That's evolution expressing itself under stadium lights. When a pitcher hits triple digits on a fastball, you're watching a skill that started millions of years ago. But throwing wasn't the only early advantage that humans developed. There's something even older than that, something deeper, something we shared with every primate that ever lived.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Before swords, before spears, before guns, armor, and armies, there was only the body. Wrestling is as old as conflict itself, because early human conflict didn't need weapons to begin. It needed space, resources, status, and survival. And all that can be settled the same way, with these hands, and occasionally feet. The body was the first battlefield, and wrestling was the first language of the battlefield. The evidence shows up everywhere. Cave carvings in Egypt dating back to 2000 BCE shows figures locked in grappling positions. You can trace modern grappling positions directly back to those images. Some of those techniques still exist today. Headlocks, trips, clinches, throws. The human body hasn't really changed much, and neither has the way it fights. Here's the important part. Every civilization developed wrestling, not because they copied each other, because they didn't need to. Conflict produces the same result everywhere. These hands/feet. Over 160 traditional forms of wrestling exist across the world. Africa, Asia, Europe, the America, independent nations, independent origins, same result. Greek made it a part of the Asian Olympics in 708 BCE, which we'll cover in a later episode. Japan developed sumo and later judo. India created Maliyadu, apology if I mispronounced that. Across the Americas, indigenous cultures had their own forms long before contact with Europe. And if you zoom out even further, wrestling isn't really unique to humans at all. It shows up in primates too. Chimpanzees wrestle, baboons wrestle, play turns into dominance turns into hierarchy, so wrestling sits in a strange place. It's a controlled version of conflict that every primate understands. When two athletes step onto a mat, into the octagon, ring, etc., it feels like a match, but it's really something deeper. A structured version of something that existed long before rules, before nations and sports itself. But even wrestling alone doesn't explain how these survival skills became games, because something had to change in the human mind first. A shift that turned necessity into play. At some point, something shifted. Survival stopped being used only when life demanding it. They started being compared. Who runs the fastest? Who throws the furthest? Who can endure the longest? Who's the strongest under pressure? That's where competition begins. And once you can compare performance, you can rank it. And once you can rank it, you can build status around it. The best hunter didn't just bring back more food, they gained respect. The strongest fighter wasn't just harder to beat, they gained influence. The fastest runner wasn't just useful in a chase, they became valuable to the entire group. Long before trophies or championships, performance was already tied to status. And that's the key. The first elite performers weren't athletes, they were survivors. Hunters, warriors, providers. And the earliest version of a championship wasn't played for a title, it was played for position in the group. This is essentially biology 101 level information, but we move. Then comes an even more important part. Play. Play looks like wasted energy from the outside, but biologically speaking, it's practice. Watch young animals. Young wolves wrestle, lions chase each other, primates mock fight. Nothing about this is random. They're rehearsing survival without the cost of real danger. Humans do the same thing. Children run before they understand racing. They wrestle before they really understand combat. They throw before anyone teaches them technique. Nobody needs to explain it. It kind of just shows up on its own, which suggests something deeper. Play is not a distraction. It is training built into biology. But humans take it a step further. Imagination. The ability to simulate something that is not happening. That changes even more things. Because once you can pretend, you can rehearse not just actions, but meaning. That's where ritual comes in. Yeah, early humans hunted, but before they acted out the hunt before it happened. The hunt became more than survival, it became ceremony, and from ceremony, something new began to emerge. Structure, rules, audiences, repetition. What started on survival terms turned into performance. What started as necessity turns into spectacle. And somewhere along that journey, the modern idea of sports began to take shape. But even this only scratches the surface, because none of that explains what happened when survival disappears and the game becomes the point.
How the human body will continue to change in the future is an open question, because evolution isn't done with us yet.
So after all that yapping, let's put it all in perspective. For 2.6 million years, humans competed for one reason: survival. We ran, we threw, we wrestled, we climbed, we chased, we fought, not for points, not for trophies, just to make it through the day. Then around 10,000 years ago, everything started to change and agriculture took hold. Villages became cities, food became more predictable, survival stopped being a constant emergency, and in that space something new began to form. Organized sport. What used to be survival became structure. What used to be necessity became competition. What used to be life and death became performance. Hunting rituals turned into ceremonies, training turned into contests, contests turned into spectacle. And over time, modern sports emerged. But they didn't replace evolution, they carried it forward. Running still remembers the hunt, wrestling still remembers conflict, throwing still remembers survival, team sports still reflect cooperation, championships still mirror status and hierarchy. Nothing disappeared, it just changed forms. The survival era wasn't a prelude, it was the blueprint. Everything that came after traces back to it. The ancient Olympics, the gladiators, medieval tournaments, modern professional sports leagues, all of it connects back to the same origin. Humans chasing, fighting, and enduring each other on the open ground. The first games were never created for entertainment, they were shaped by evolution itself. That leaves one final question. At what point did survival stop being literal and start becoming symbolic? When did sports become ritual? When did competition become identity, belief, and power? This is where the new era begins, the ritual and warrior era. That's coming up in episode 2 of the very literal history of sports, better name pending. Thank you for watching.